I'm sure we've all heard about the top 10 episodes of the year recap. If that's you, it's okay if you've done that. But I'm finding it's not as memorable as some of the other ideas that I was thinking of as I was coming up with some ideas for clients of things that they could do during the holidays. How can we deepen the relationship with our listeners and take it beyond just top 10 episodes, who dis, into something deeper and even more impactful? Welcome to Podcasting Unlocked, the show for purpose-driven podcasters. I'm Alicia Galati, founder of Galati Media, and I'm here to share actionable strategies to help you amplify your message and grow your audience. Hey friend, super excited to have you back for another episode. We are gearing up for the end of the year, and I know that might feel a little daunting for a lot of people as you're thinking of, wow, another year of podcasting, or maybe this is your very first year in podcasting. Either way, congratulations, we have made it. End of the year episodes are such a perfect time to break the format and to test some different things. Most of the time, people aren't listening as much during the holidays. They're traveling, they have other things on their mind. Maybe they're trying to complete their reading goal of the year and listening to a bunch of audiobooks. Whatever it is a great space to just kind of take advantage of your listeners' holiday mode that they seem to be in. I think that it's a great space to go a little less heavy on the educational parts and just have some fun with connecting and being truly authentically you. Today, we're going to be talking about some out-of-the-box ideas of episodes that you can record literally this week, even if you have zero prep, that are going to help you and be very strategic. We're also going to talk through some ideas going into next year as you're thinking about, oh man, wow, I already recorded the episodes for this year, but I want to consider some things that I could do for next year's episodes for the end of the year. Before we get into all of that and more, I have a quick story to share with you. We have a client who reached out and said, hey, we're thinking about doing a bloopers episode, but only 2 of the 3 co-hosts are the ones who actually make mistakes. Have you had any clients do any blooper episodes, and what does that look like? And sure enough, as I was thinking about that, I was like, wow, that is quite a daunting task, especially as we're already in December. But what are some ways, and this is just something how I try to tend to approach a lot of things, is, all right, if this is not something that I feel comfortable doing in its entirety, what are some other ways that we can make this work to make the client happy, that makes sense for us in our workflow as well? And so it got me thinking, and we did have a client that is doing something similar this year. So this client specifically has a podcast that is leaders, C-suite level leaders, CEOs, VPs, board members, etc. These are like really high level leaders in across a bunch of different industries. And she talks to them about their leadership journey. What did their life look like? What are those kind of 5 chunks of their life? And then picking 5 songs that apply to each of those sections of their life. And it's such a unique podcast, but also it's really impactful in helping leaders understand the lessons and the stories that they learn along the way that get them to where they are today. And for this podcast specifically, we're doing 2 end of year kind of bonusy fun episodes. The first is a blooper reel, and the client has been compiling timestamps and notes of the episodes that we've recorded so far. We're on episode 32 as of this recording. So about 30-ish episodes, and then grabbing those notes that she has and then compiling that into an episode. Now, because it is also a musically themed podcast, we're able to grab those sections where the host and the guest break out into song, which is also going to be a ton of fun and really exciting for them. So that is what we're doing on that end. And that's, I'm finding, is really helpful for compiling something of that magnitude. Now, you might be thinking, I don't even have that. That's okay. You can kind of come up with an idea for that for next year as you're thinking about that. Now, another idea that this client had for another bonus episode for the month of December is that she is planning on doing here are the top 5 songs, because there were quite a few songs that people mentioned multiple times. And so taking those 5 songs, the host talking about what that song makes her think of, what lessons in life that makes her think of, what time of life it makes her think of, and then taking some of those clips of what those guests said about that specific song and how it impacted that point in their life. And so, kind of a compilation of those things. And what I love about this idea is that it's something that we can take and repurpose in different ways. So, maybe it is something along the lines of here are 5 lessons that we found quite a few of our guests had this year. And so, taking it not just as here are 5 songs that everybody had on their list, but just taking it a step further and thinking about how you can apply it to your own podcast. But let's go ahead and go into some of these ideas and options that you can record right now, because maybe those ones feel a little too daunting, and maybe those ones are ones that you can do next year as you think about what it is that your guests are talking about. Maybe it's a question that you ask at the end of every episode that you can compile. What does that end up looking like? Our first idea is a podcast confessional. So instead of sharing bloopers, you tell the stories behind the bloopers. What were some of those scariest moments? Maybe your internet died in the middle of an episode or middle of a recording, or maybe you were in the middle of discussing something with a guest only to realize, actually, I disagree with what this person is saying. Maybe something happened where your cat came in and accidentally knocked over your drink onto your computer, right? What are those kind of behind the scenes things that happened in the year that made or broke your podcast episodes? So instead of sharing those bloopers, just share the story behind them. And what that does is it allows your audience to hear you, to hear more about the human being behind the podcast, and give people some insight into what it looks like behind the scenes for you specifically. Another episode idea is that you give the episodes that didn't make it. Maybe you had a episode that you were like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to share this, I'm going to be brave, and never mind. And that's okay. It happens to the best of us. But what was that big, bold, thought-provoking idea that you had that just never became an episode? Now is a great time to test it out, to see what people's feedback actually is. You can always take them down later if you want and pretend you were on a holiday for your podcast. But what are those ones where you were like, I kind of want to share this, but I don't know that it makes sense, or I'm not sure how people are going to take it? Be vulnerable, be open with your audience, and share that idea. Another idea is giving the best and worst advice for your podcast. Or maybe if you have a lot of guests on your show, you don't want to do the worst advice from guests. And so maybe it's just things in your industry that you found or that happened, and what was the best and worst advice for your industry. Another idea is to do a compilation episode. Now, this is one where you might need to utilize an AI tool. We had a client do something similar to this in the summer, and she actually did not see any dips in her downloads for the summertime, even though she did a lot of compilation episodes. But she had over 200 episodes of conversations that she had already had. And so she does midlife conversations. And so she had a bunch of menopause doctors on. So she did a best of these conversations with these menopause doctors. She had conversations with founders. She did the best of conversations with product founders. She also did an episode that was specifically around growing and launching a business. All right, here's the best of growing and launching a business at midlife. And what I love about this is you can easily put your transcripts into an AI tool. You can say, here are the episodes. I want to create a best of that makes sense. Give me a script of things that I can say between or before each segment. And maybe it's 4 or 5 episodes that you're compiling together. And then give me 8 to 10 minute segments from the actual episode that I can re-air in this compilation. And the reason that I like the idea of re-airing in a compilation is that when it's a lot less work for you, you only have to sit down and record the snippets in between. It revitalizes your audience to give them the very best meat from previous episodes. And it gives you space to go deeper with these conversations or share maybe some key takeaways that you had as you were listening or re-listening to this conversation that you had previously. Or maybe you mentioned, hey, I think I'm going to take action on this. All right, what action did you actually take? And encouraging your audience to do the same or to go back and listen to the full episodes. This also works really well because you're able to tell your audience to go back and listen to past episodes. And that's going to increase the number of downloads that those past episodes have. They might hear something that's really good and they're like, ooh, I want more. I want to hear more from that person. But it also gives them a snippet or a little teaser of the conversation before diving full in. Absolutely love this idea. Another idea for your podcast end of year episodes is an award, either serious or for funsies, whichever you want. Maybe it's awards for your guests or for certain episodes. And it would be great here to also grab some really impactful clips from some of the things that your guests said during those episodes as well. And then, of course, there is one of my favorite end of year reviews, and that is, how do you feel? It's not what were the top 10 episodes. It's not 10 things I learned about. No, I want you to share the wins and the losses of this year. I want you to share how you grew as a person and some of the things or shifts that happened in your mindset as someone who is hosting this podcast. Maybe you share some of the deeper conversations that you had with some of your listeners. And this is going to allow your listeners to feel like they belong to something bigger, like they belong to something that is actually not just changing their life, but if you're doing your podcast well, it's probably changing your life too in some ways. And so, what were those things? What happened this year that made or broke your show? And how are you a better person because of the podcast that you have? So, those are my ideas. Lots of them that you can pick and choose from, but those are all ones that you could literally record this week. You wouldn't have to do too much prep for them, and you should feel really excited and should be fun. I want us to, as we're thinking about this, as we're thinking about, okay, it's the end of the year, not just do it for fluff, but do it for our own enjoyment. When we stop loving our podcast, when we stop enjoying talking to our audience or sharing the deeper things that we're learning from our show, I honestly think it's probably time to stop podcasting. And as we think about the kinds of podcasts that we want to put out into the world into the next year, really ask yourself that question, is this still enjoyable for me? No, not every day is going to be perfect. No, not every episode is going to be the best thing that ever happened. But do you still think about your podcast with excitement and enjoyment and curiosity and excited to have conversations about it? Then you're in the right place. You're doing the right thing. But if you're not, I really want you to sit with that during this holiday season. Maybe you take 2 weeks off. And that's okay. Your podcast is not going to crash and burn if you take 2 weeks off to say, do I still love this? If no, what do you need to do next? We have some episodes, and I will have them linked in the show notes, where we talk about what to do when you no longer love your podcast, like you're not really sure. You're trying to assess what to do next with your show. Because I know end of year can feel like that. We've got so much going on. And then you got to do your podcast on top of all of that. All right. So as we think about next year, what are some ideas of things that we can talk about that are going to actually, we can record throughout the year without having to think about it at the end of next year of, oh man, I said I was going to do that thing, or I have nothing to share at the end of next December. So I would say start thinking about what is going to be the easiest low lift thing that makes the most sense for you. Maybe it's that you have your podcast editor start adding a blooper timestamp to their workflow. Or maybe it's if you stumble or you go into a laughing fit, you actually don't delete it and you keep it and you have those timestamps. Maybe if you're someone who talks to your editor, like our clients do talk to us throughout their episode, you can say, cut this for the main episode that we're doing for the end of the year, right? So, like, there's lots of different options of ways to create that blooper podcast episode if that's something that you want to do. Another idea, and this is something that I'm going to be doing with my hobby podcast, and that is taking the content that's kind of an after dark version of the actual podcast of this is after we quote unquote hit stop recording, but we actually had some really great conversations. And so I'm going to keep recording that. And that's going to be bonus content for my podcast. Or maybe it's episodes that I air in between my seasons or however I see fit to do it. But that is going to help you get that extra content. And maybe it's that you keep recording for 60 seconds after you say goodbye. Where are those things that you're like, I cannot believe I just said that? That was wild. How do those post end recording thoughts or feelings feel? And then compile those into an episode. Tons of different ideas around things that you can do outside of your actual recording, but use them for that episode. And then if you're wanting to do a best of or the best advice or worst advice of the year, start a running list as you're listening to these conversations, if you're editing them or as you are recording them, thinking about, ooh, that what guest said something really good, or hey, team, I want you to grab a 5-minute segment from this episode that was really gold, whatever that looks like, to be able to strategically combine that best of. And that way that takes 20 minutes instead of 20 hours in December of next year. I know that these episode ideas might seem like fluff, but I promise that these episodes are actually going to help you with growing your impact and maybe even generating leads. People buy from people that they know, they like, and they trust. And when you show your humanity, when you show the mistakes, when you show hey, this is me, this is who I am, and this is the person that you're listening to, it allows them to feel more connected with you and it builds that genuine trust, not just this person is a guru. No, they're a human being who also has things that I can buy. And they're going to be more likely to buy from you. There are certain times of the year that listeners are going to feel that mental overstimulation. There's a lot of content going out into the world. They're getting fed ads left and right. And so how can we, as content creators, give them a palate cleanser? Give them something that is going to make them go, that was actually really enjoyable. That is what we want to create. And then go back to those high value strategies in January. But for December, for maybe those last 2 episodes, or maybe even that first week in January, if your episode lands on January 1st, give them something that is going to be a breath of fresh air, but is still going to keep them listening to your show. We want to keep people on. We don't want them to feel like, if I've heard it once, I've heard it a million times. No, let's give them some value. I truly believe that listeners are looking for deeper connections with the people that they're engaging with, the content that they're engaging with. It feels like you're never really sure what's AI and what's not. And so if there's a way that you can, as a human being, sharing human experiences with other human beings on the other side of your podcast, if there are ways that we can connect with them on a deeper level, it is strategic. It is not fluff. Okay, so here is your challenge. I want you to record one non-educational, personality-driven segment for your final episode of the year. Or maybe it's your entire episode, but at least a little section of your episode that is sharing a little bit more about you, a little bit more personality, going behind the scenes rather than just teaching or training or strategy or implementing. No, let's have a little fun with it. Bring back that excitement for you. And I want you to really, really, truly consider, is this podcast something I want to keep doing into the next year? If it is, awesome. If not, what are your next steps? If you're not sure and you want to talk through this, because I understand, I've been there, I've talked people through this process, then I want to invite you to a free one-on-one consultation. It's 15 minutes. Ask your questions, get some answers. If you are just wanting someone to hear you and listen or to redirect you in the right way, I'm here for you and I'm happy to support you along your podcasting journey. Until next time, happy podcasting.